All right. Hey guys, how's it going? So today we have Robert Paterson here. He's a composer and puts out a lot of new classical music and has a lot of upcoming shows this year, next year, 2023. Today is December 18th at 5:23 p.m. and I'm excited to have Robert Patterson on the show, my first interview.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so honored. Thanks, Mark.
All right, thanks, Robert. So I'll just go ahead and show them your website because I think it's a really cool one and really nice, simple layout so anyone can navigate on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to keep it pretty clear because I think, we're also busy. I try to do my best to make it easy to find things on my website. I think that's maybe a frustration that I have with some composers' websites or even just musicians in general. Sometimes it's so hard to find key pieces of information, and I think we should all try to make it easier for each other to find things, to find pieces or photos even or bios or whatever.
Yeah, and I was taking a look at some of your scores. I think it's great for composers too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let's talk about your upcoming works, which will pop up on the screen in a second.
Sure.
Um, so you're going to be doing a lot of world premieres, it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
in June and
Yes.
July.
Yep. So
So,
I have a music festival that I run called Mostly Modern Festival in Saratoga Springs, New York.
yes.
And I also have another kind of cousin festival to that, or sister festival, called Mostly Modern Festival, but it's in the Netherlands, and that happens in April. I don't have any world premieres in that one, I think, or I might, but I haven't added it yet. And then besides that, I have other pieces I'm working on that are on my upcoming works page that might not be at the festival. But yeah, I mean, I use the festival to perform my own music, but also the music of every summer we do at least 30 world premieres by other composers. So I do my part in helping our community that way, I think, as much as I can. And plus pieces by other composers who aren't even at the festival. And then Netherlands is the same way. And that this time in April, we'll be inviting 12 composers from around the world. So we'll do their pieces. And I think pretty much all of them will have world premieres, or at least most of them. So yeah, but as far as my work, yeah, and I've got other performances all over the place, but those are the premieres. That's that page. And I'm lucky for that. And I've worked really hard to get to that point where I can say that I have even a bunch of performances coming up. I think it's really hard to get to that point. And I've written a lot of music, so I think that helps. It's kind of like there's more options. If you've only written a few pieces, there's less options. But when you write a lot more for different combinations and different forces, then I think it makes it easier.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So as a composer, so what's the process like for submitting to the to
Mostly
be a
Modern Festival.
yeah, to the
Oh,
most and also is there like a group of guys sitting around a table listening to the music? How does that process work?
well, I think you know where this answer might go. We're not, as much as I love that idea, we're not necessarily able to sit around a physical table. So maybe a digital table,
Yeah.
only because the sometimes the composers who are teaching will chime in, and if they want to, don't give their time for that, who are teaching at the festival. Every summer, by the way, we have at least three composers, and this summer it'll be four. At least three composers besides myself and my composition program coordinator named Stephen Cavell, who's from California. He and I do the bulk of the vetting, and it's mostly me, and then he chimes in a lot and also gives his opinion. And he's super intelligent, smart, great composer, so he also has a lot to say. And most of the time, it's pretty obvious. I mean, if somebody's more advanced than somebody else, you'll see that right away, and hear that in their music and see it in the sheet music. So what we do is we get all the applications and we go through everything, and just like any other festival or competition type situation, we look at all the pieces, listen to music, look at their background a little bit, and then figure out, try to rate everybody and see, who'd be a good fit to come to the festival. And it's hard. It's really hard because not everybody can go. We can't accept everybody, so we have to make some choices. And which is unfortunate. I mean, I wish everybody could go, and I also wish everybody could go for free, and we have to charge tuition, and we're working towards that. Someday our goal is to make it free. But right now it's only our fourth season, so we're not there yet. Because we're all hurting. Nobody has a lot of money usually. I mean,
Yeah.
some people do,
Yo,
but
I mean, this reminds me, like talking about the so composers, like or any artists like trying to get their music. Well, for me, I saw this wind quartet one time. It was all brass
uh-huh.
wind quartet, and
Wind
no,
quintet or quartet?
quintet, yeah.
Okay, good. Quintets are a little more common.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
So it was. I just went on a whim and I saw it, in like a
Mhm.
meetup app or something. And
Mhm.
after the show, I was just so enthralled by this music. I was like, how do I? Can you guys play something I wrote? Because I was writing at the time, and for about
Right.
a year, and I was just imagining like, what if they did play something that I wrote? I think
Hmm.
that'd be really cool because the combination of their sounds, I never heard anything like it. It was really unique.
Yep.
um, and the rhythmic implications of some of their instruments is like, yeah, this really jams.
Yeah.
Um,
Brass
so
quintets are great. They're
yeah,
usually they're a great type of ensemble because
yeah, yeah,
most of their repertoire is either fairly recent or they do lots of transcriptions and arrangements of old music. But they're usually pretty open to interesting, challenging music.
yeah.
So we love our brass quintet. By the way, at the festival, they're the Atlantic Brass Quintet. They're amazing. They've been with us for a few seasons. They're great. Love those guys. They're fantastic players, really adventurous and open to
Atlantic Reed.
I'm sorry, Atlantic Brass Quintet. Yeah, ABQ.
Okay.
That's their name. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
so after their performance, I went up to the guys and I was like, and he told me, to just email them, and I never did it, but it was just cool to have that experience.
you should always, okay, rule number one, if an ensemble says email us, it even gives you that window, you should definitely email them.
It
Even
was
just
so long ago.
that's
I was
okay.
like, I really thought about it though. I was like, which song should I choose, right? But like, yeah, and so on the topic of artists who are up and coming,
Mhm.
um, I found you on SoundCloud,
Yeah,
and
thank you. Right.
um, one thing I noticed with your SoundCloud, and I mean just the SoundCloud community in general, is that there's a lot of pop, rap, R&B artists on there that
Yes,
are
there is.
making electronic music, and they're all
Right.
commenting that your music is fire. And
Right. Yeah, I love that. Where'd you get that fire, that beat?
that's
And
the
what would
one,
you
like the beat.
yeah.
Wait, it's like the
Well, I
beat.
no, this is how dumb I am. Okay, so I had to ask. I have a 16-year-old son who goes by Exo Perp, by the way, Purp. He's got some great music. I love my son's music. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I do like it
Yeah.
a lot. He think he's brilliant. But and of course I'm biased. He's my son, but anyway, I love his music. But he said when I said to him once the first time I'd heard that, this is how naive I was. So he said, Dad, what do you think of my beat? And I said, oh, you mean the drums in the background of whatever? And he goes, no, the beat. I said, what do you mean by it? He goes, the music, the what I
Yeah.
created, the beat. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, so you guys are calling the music, the instrumental music, and behind the vocals, the beat. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I've never heard that way before. And so I felt so old, and I was like, Jesus,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not missing much. It refers to like a short loop of
right.
a rhythm. I think the beat is like from the drums mostly, right? But like,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, and I guess he's
yeah,
16, so the way he's referring to it seemed even well, I'm sure you're right, but it seemed like he was referring to it in a broader sense to mean
yeah,
an
true.
entire music track. But the other thing I learned is then he said he was talking about stems and all these other the terminology that everybody uses now for songwriting in either FL Studio or Logic or all those DAWs, right?
Mhm.
And which is a digital audio workstation if you haven't heard that before, I guess, right? So anyway, it's a very different world, right? SoundCloud and everybody that's on there. Then normally there's not a lot of classical composers on SoundCloud, or if
Yeah,
they're there like obligatorily. They have a few things posted, but they're not getting a lot of hits because they're not promoting themselves and they're just putting it up on their website and they just connect it or something, right? So I just decided, you know what? I'm going to really try to get to know these people and really comment on people's tracks and just I don't know, make some friends and that's how we met, I guess. And that's great. I love that. I'm really grateful we met that way. But I just kind of I'm learning a lot from hearing other people's music on there. It gives me a good sense of the ecosystem, right? Of what's out there beyond classical too, you know. I mean, look, I listen to the radio, I go on YouTube, and I'm pretty aware of what's out there these days, but I am definitely learning all kinds of side types of music that I've never heard before. And I think that in a weird way that affects my music a little bit. I'm hearing a really broad swath of styles, you know,
Yeah.
which I'm really digging. I really enjoy it a lot. So I mean, I've met some very interesting people through SoundCloud, you know.
And to be more specific on how exactly I found you, it was the Repost Exchange, which, if anyone doesn't know, it's a really good interface for getting your music out there
Yep.
for free. And you can basically trade comments for credits, or if you want to, you could pay. It's pretty small. It's a smaller fee to get people
Yeah,
to
it's a great
listen.
service. Yeah, I
Yeah,
use that. And it's nice to, if you want, you know, and they figured out that company has kind of cracked the code for being able to promote in a way that
yeah,
won't get you banned or something, you know, because you're doing it in a holistic way because you are listening to each other's tracks, so it's for real, you know. I like that service a lot. I think it's great. Yeah, I've used that. That's great that we found each other in that. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, anyway, I just think that one of the things I love about SoundCloud as opposed to like Spotify, I mean, you know, it's the good thing about it, the good side of it is that it lets you connect with other people and make comments. And that can be a nice thing, you know. The not so good thing is I wish they paid more royalties, like other companies, but you know, this is also difficult. I don't blame them, or maybe I should blame them, but I know that streaming, it's a very weird place we're in right now, isn't it? Like how you make income from streams and or how you can even make recordings and how you can survive. I think about that a lot because I run a record company as well, and do movie placements and things like that for soundtracks. And it's very difficult to survive as a composer. I think it's difficult to make it work, you know. So most of us have side hustles, or maybe composing is your side hustle. That's okay, you know. We all have our own journey, right? Our own path, I think.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. I mean, for me, I'm a music instructor, a piano tuner, and
There you go.
you know, that keeps me afloat. And then I just compose every night. I write in FL Studio every night. Um,
You're like a modern Charles Ives. That's what he did. He would sell insurance during the day and then go home and compose in the evenings, you know, or
yeah,
early
well, at
morning.
least I'm doing the same realm, right? I really strive for that. I try to keep my life centered around music. But yeah, so talking
Mhm.
about composing, how so I saw that you actually write, like you physically write, and
Mhm.
then you do Sibelius. Um,
I do.
so
Yes.
because and for me, like I like, as much as I like writing music, I don't know if I'd have the patience to be, go
You want
all
to see something scary that nobody's seen yet? I'll show you. I'll
but
put up a sheet of what I'm writing right now. Do you want to see what it looks like?
sure.
Here, hold on a second. Here. So I'm writing right now. I'm writing a piece for piano trio and orchestra for the
Yeah.
Need Trio, which just got nominated for a Grammy. And Joanne Folletta, who's won Grammys, she's the conductor. She's amazing from the Buffalo Philharmonic and Virginia Symphony. She was conducting there for a while. Anyway, this is what I don't know if you can see this, but this is what my notation looks like. Here, I'll put up to the camera a little bit.
Yeah.
That's my pencil score. So
Looks about
um,
right.
yeah, and that's so that's a sketch of just like it's not even the full score. It's just like a short sketch. So then I'll write the parts out. I'll put little notes about what instruments will play that. And the reason I do it that way personally, just for myself, is because I like to get a sense of the form and the flow before I go to big giant orchestral pages where I'm then doing more detail, because I want a sense of how the whole span is going to go. And I find that short scores like that can help. And I know in Sibelius there's a way of doing little snippets and things. I use Sibelius, but I don't use the snippet feature that much these days. Anyway, so I know, and when I show people that I write by hand, they're like, "Oh man, that's like nobody does that anymore." I feel very out of place, and but I like the rate that I compose by doing it that way because it slows me down a little bit, and then I put in Sibelius later. And for the record, I used Finale for over 20 years, so I used that program for a long time before I moved to Sibelius. So I know that program really well. Anyway, yeah, so that's part of my process. That's how I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's totally OG. I mean, just writing everything. I mean, yeah. props. Um,
Thanks. Well, thank you.
yeah. I mean, I know how hard it is to write. So
It's
I
hard. You
mean,
know, it's hard. It's hard
yeah,
to be self-motivated. Like, I'm just telling you, it's the truth. I mean, like, every day I get, I'm like, wow, what am I going to do today? Like, I'm thinking about those
yeah,
measures of that part of the piece I'm going to write, compose. And it's very, you have to be a self-motivated kind of person to be a musician in general. But I think to be a composer and be all by yourself every day, it's really hard because all you have to do is turn around, stare at your computer screen, and watch YouTube videos. It's pretty easy, right? There's entertainment everywhere. I mean, or you get, no, I'm kidding a little bit, but you can also just read a book. You can go make more food. You can go outside and run around. I mean, so to sit there and go, well, I'm going to sit here for the next 3 hours and write music. Well, motivating yourself is key, I think, and having reasons to do it. So you better love it, I guess. And I definitely love it. So,
so for you, does some of that motivation come from the fact that people are going to be playing this music?
oh, yeah. I mean, that helps. It
Yeah,
helps. I think it's, I remember there have been moments in my life when I was younger where I didn't have as many groups wanting to play my music because nobody knew who I was when I was young. And I motivated myself by thinking, hey, I'm going to write this piece and then send it around and give it to people to see if they'll perform it. And I also look, there's a sense of motivation from just saying to yourself, hey, I'm writing this just because I love what I do and I want to write a piece of music that if it ever gets done, I'm going to love to hear it. And that's okay too. And that's fine. You have to love what you do first. That's the key. And love being into it, right? And having a good time with it. Um, because if you're not having fun doing it, you shouldn't do it. Does that make sense? At least to me. Um, I meet composers sometimes and I could tell they're very dreary and they're not having fun. I'm like, why are you doing this? Go do something else. If you're not having fun creating music, then find something you have fun doing. But then I meet other composers who clearly have lots of fun doing this, and they're the one they should keep doing it. Like I'm doing it. I mean, do it if you're having fun with it, because life's short, right? Don't be miserable. I mean,
yeah, yeah. I wrote a
um,
song with my friend called "If You Love It, Keep Going. If You Don't, Stop."
there you go. That's it. Your song will be the anthem of all composers and songwriters, right? That's
Yeah,
that's it in a nutshell. Um, yeah. So I guess well, I'll tell you one trick that I use for any composers out there. I usually leave off somewhere where I know I can begin the next day. So like I'll leave off a measure or part of my piece and I'll say, okay, I know I'm going to do the next day so I can jump right in. Because the jumping in part's usually the hard part. It's just going, okay, here I go, sitting down again, doing it again. And then I know exactly where I left off. And it's kind of like writing a book, right? You might want to, this character is having a monologue or something, and the next scene is whatever in your book or something, if you're a book writer. So and in fact, I may have even learned that technique from a book by Stephen King, believe it or not, called On Writing.
oh, he's my favorite author.
Yeah, he's great. Stephen King. I don't. If you don't like Stephen King, you're not my friend. I'm sorry, I can't be your friend. Okay, because Stephen King is great. He owns the genre of horror writing, and he's even an author beyond that, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
that book on writing is really good. He encapsulates a lot of philosophies and thoughts that I think can be applied to music composition. So I've pulled some ideas from that over the years, and other books too that are really great. But that one was fascinating, I think, to read what his process is, and that was one of the points, to be able to stop somewhere, I think, and then leave off, and then be able to come back to it. I think that was in there. I could be wrong, but I think that's where I got it. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about your recent. So the first music I heard from you was stuff from In Real Life,
Uh
and I
huh.
thought it was so cool how clear the story was. It was like someone was talking instead of singing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny at the same time. And one of your works reminded me of work by Frank Zappa from 200
Wow. Thanks.
Motels called uh, like it was like uh, it was like hot soup. It's like hot broth. It was
Oh,
like
I know
something.
what you're talking about, and it's on the tip of my tongue. I haven't heard that in a long time. I'm blanking on the name, but I know exactly. I know what that is. Yeah, and
It was, yeah. I mean, it was like the lyrics are like hot broth with Vienna sausages, and it was like it was provoking. You know,
yeah,
uh, like it was really funny. It was like are they making a sexual joke, are they really
Right.
just
Well,
like,
Frank Zappa was such a genius, wasn't he?
yeah, I
He was
mean,
amazing.
so when I heard your stuff, I immediately thought of that. This is the only thing I had to compare.
Well,
Um,
thanks. I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
and
Um,
the let's see, like so, like three way and um,
mhm.
that's my favorite. That's my favorite like performance one because
Oh, thanks.
it was really funny. It was like so much sexual humor in there, and uh,
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting piece to talk about. So that for
yeah,
those of your audience that don't know what that is, that's an opera I wrote, and it's called Three Way. And it's three one-act operas that can be done as a group all together or individually.
yeah. And what a
And
great show to go to an opera and have them singing a story to you.
right, yeah. So it's
Great
a very
concept.
narrative
Mhm.
type opera, yeah. Where there are three stories basically.
Yeah,
And the librettist who wrote the text, David Cody, did a great job. And by the way, all these stories are original. He wrote them all himself. They're not copies of like a book or something like that. And he's brilliant. So I think yeah, it's kind of a nickname now. When people meet me, they go, "Oh, you're Rob, the guy that wrote the sex opera." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. I don't mind that. I own that, but
yeah,
I'll own it." But I think it's way more. I view these stories more about. I think the premiere was with Nashville Opera, and I think that company came up with a slogan for it. They said, it's really about craving and connection, and I thought that's really apt. Because I think what the stories are really about is wanting to connect with each other, and not just the sex part is interesting. That's fun because it binds it all together. Because anyway, quickly, so everybody knows what it is. He's like, what did you do? The first act is called The Companion, and it's about a biomorphic android that looks human, and the robot's lover, named Maya. Maya's upset with how the robot companion isn't connecting with her, speaking of connections, so she maxes out her credit for an upgrade. So, and then hilarity ensues from that all the way through the rest of the opera, I think. And then there's a fix-it guy who gets involved and a little love triangle, and so that's how that goes. The second act is about dominatrix and her client, and I don't want to give away too much because it is on YouTube, so you can check it out. But basically, it's about the interaction between those two characters and what happens at the end. And there's this giant twist, which I won't reveal. But it's fun. It's a fun story, and it's a little like shocking at moments, because it's about a dominatrix. So clearly, there's going to be something there that's a little wild. Anyway, the third act, and this is the one that's probably the most controversial. It's about a swinger party, and it takes place in some house out there somewhere in the Hamptons or Long Island or who knows where it is, South Carolina, anywhere. And it's about these four couples, the host couple and three other couples, and it's how they interact and how they change from the beginning of the evening to the end of the evening and how they evolve. And so again, I think this, and to tie this all together, I think between that in real life, which is about online dating, that's what those songs are about. They're dating songs. So it's interesting, all different characters in the dating world, like, stereotypes really. I think I like, some people think of composers as like these dead white dudes from like hundreds of years ago with white wigs or whatever. I mean, that's not the way it is anymore. And composers want to connect with audiences now, and that's the whole point. So I try to use subjects or work with writers who are working with me on subjects that are now contemporary and that things that will resonate with us here in the today that we live in. So that was the goal with those pieces. And I have set poems by dead people and done all sorts of that kind of stuff. But I think I love working with living writers. There's nothing more fun than collaborating, I think, and working with people that you trust and that are really good at what they do. That's so much fun if you can do it. And even if it's just some friend you meet at a bar and that person's a poet or something, and you work with that person, great. I mean, maybe they can write some text for you for a song. I think it's so much fun. Like life's short. We should all do things collectively if we can have some fun with it. Otherwise, composers can just hole up and be by themselves, like hobbits or whatever, or they're like in caves. It feels like I'm in my office.
yeah,
It feels like a cave sometimes. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
here I am doing my thing. So
yeah.
anytime you get to meet other people and hang out with them, it's great. It's a great day, for composers.
So for me, I really like the entrepreneurial spirit. I've started
Mhm.
two businesses on my own, and
Mhm.
I'm curious, how did you start the Mostly Modern Orchestra and that whole?
Mhm.
Uh,
The festival. Okay, so the way
mhm,
Okay, so I have a though. I think I mentioned this a little earlier. Maybe later you can put a link in the description or something.
Like, how did it first start? Like, what was
Yeah.
your idea? How did
Um,
you go about, you know?
so I think a lot of my life has been about um, seeing a problem, or seeing not even a problem, but seeing a gap somewhere and saying,
Hmm,
I wish that existed. I want to fix that, or I want to make something
yeah,
of my own that does something I want it to do. So I started out, just to give you a quick background. I have a group called American Modern Ensemble, and that's a expanded kind of a large chamber group in New York. Mixed instrumentation, so we do different concerts with different groups, like, 6 instruments that are all different. Then we'll do another piece with 3 instruments, another piece with 10. We do all kinds of crazy things. We've done hundreds of composers, and probably at this point, probably over 100 concerts, over the years. We've been around for probably 16, 17 years. Anyway, so I started that a long time ago because I was like, well, I want a new music group that's not only going to play my music, but also music of composers who I like, who I didn't think were getting played enough. So I started that group. Then I was like, I had one piece released on a label for recording. I didn't like how they did it. I didn't think they did a great job. So I'm like, I'm going to create my own label. And so then I created a record label, and actually 2 record labels, one of which was commercial music called Lumiere Records. And we used the money from that to fund the recordings of contemporary music by living composers on the other label, which is called American Modern Recordings. Okay. So those are the first 2 things I did. Then years later, and this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, I taught at these different festivals around the country, which were really great. I had a great time. Rocky Ridge Music Center, which I don't even think has a composition program anymore. It's in Colorado. And the Atlanta Music Festival, which still does have a big composition program. And I ran that program for at least a summer, and then I taught there for many summers. And I thought, I like this and it's good, but I kind of want to do my own thing because there are things I want to do differently. So my wife, who's a violinist, we decided, hey, let's start our own festival. And of course, that sounds crazy. And a lot of people said, don't do it. But we didn't listen to them because I'm like, let's just, they were afraid it was going to become like Coachella, right? Or something like that. They were afraid it was going to like crash and burn, like become like this giant fiasco. I don't know if you know about, was it Coachella? Am I getting that right? The festival that was all that money and then it just imploded. Is that the right one?
I don't
I
know.
don't know. I might, maybe somebody else will correct us in the notes or something. It was a festival that just didn't survive, and there was all this scandal about it. So people say, don't start a festival, man. If it fails, it's going to be really embarrassing. I said, look, we'll start small, see how it goes, and then we'll grow it, right? So fortunately, we did it the first summer years ago, and it worked. So I've put together enough big pieces now, opera productions, a group. I've done enough organizational things that it didn't seem like a daunting task because we're both Victoria and I are used to organizing stuff. So we're like, that's kind of what happened. And we just said, well, let's just, make a site, and we'll open it up to applications, and we'll put together these different parts of it, and we'll just make it work. And if it fails, it fails. And then we'll just, walk away like a puppy with our tail between our legs, and we won't think twice. But it didn't fail. It went really, really well. And so we thought, this is great. We love doing it. So let's just keep going. So that's basically it. And now I think it's a big part of my life. And now we're trying to do festivals, if we can, in other places that are part of this festival, like offshoots. And one is in the Netherlands, So we're doing our best to spread the word a little bit around the world, as much as we can. So that's how that got started.
Yeah, that's great. For me, like one thing that I did to collaborate with other people is just I found a couple other people that use my program,
Mm-hmm.
FL Studio, in
Yep.
on Reddit, and then we made a group together and started writing together.
Nice. I like
And
that. Yeah. Cool.
so we send like projects through email, and there's this thing called Splice where you can just post your project file
Mm-hmm.
online, and someone else can download it, and you have to add them, and then
Yep.
you just work on it whenever, and then it'll upload automatically
Yeah.
on the. So that's really cool.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we figured all that out. Um, and yeah,
I think, look, here I want to say this because I think this is important. So many people who are going to be listening to this, you're not like me or you, even like you're doing things that are different. You do what you love and do whatever method works for you, because using FL Studio, posting things on Splice, doing it that way, whether you use SoundCloud or not, for example, it doesn't matter. All it matters is it works for you, right? I mean, like, and if, by the way, if you like collabing and working with other people, you should totally do that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
More composers should do that, in my opinion.
I think
Um,
something people can learn from people like you is like that. Well, for one thing, I mean, you've studied, and I mean, your music it shows that that you know what you're doing, and you have like these accomplishments, and
mhm.
but not only that, you're trying to reach that audience that otherwise wouldn't listen to it, and um, I think that's important too. Like, uh, I was listening to this band Blue Oyster Cult from
It's so
back in
funny
the
you say
day.
that. You say that like Blue Oyster, and like that was a huge name back in.
Yeah, I never knew about them,
But
right?
yeah, yeah,
I just
they were
discovered their
pretty massive
music.
back in the day, back in the
Yeah,
olden days, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, and if people knew how good music was, more.
I look, I'm not going to judge. I've heard a lot of great, uh, like, I
I'm going
people
to
like,
judge.
no, no, it's okay. But people like Kendrick Lamar,
Yeah,
I mean, I have to admit, I'm my kid's trying to get me into Young Lean. I'm not there yet. I'm like, his out of tune singing is just grating on my nerves. I can't
yeah.
deal yet.
Have you heard
Yet.
of Two Set Violin?
No, no, what's
All
that?
right, so you would love them because they have this whole community, and they're two professional violin players that really push like classical music is good.
Oh,
It's
okay.
still
No,
relevant.
I
Mhm.
do know who they are. Yeah, okay, I
Yeah,
remember. Yeah,
and
uh-huh.
they have this whole Reddit page, and it's really popular and controversial too, but it's still uh, holds a candle because they're right. I mean, they practice all the time. At the end of their videos, they'll tell you to practice too. Um,
That's great.
yeah,
I
but they're right because the music they play, it's still relevant. It's still really good.
mhm,
And if you're just in a pop realm, like
mhm.
for example, you would never know that this chord exists from classical music. You would never know. Like, so as a music creator, I think it's important to just at least know it exists.
Right. I think, what I'm noticing too is I think this is okay, it's gonna be a weird thing to say. I think it's very easy for musicians, especially when they're starting out, to take the easiest path, if you know what I mean. Like they'll create in ways that seem most comfortable and won't push themselves enough. Like push themselves in ways by to listen to stuff they've never heard, number one, to use tools they've never used. And as far as the issue of like using a studio and layering things and using that kind of method, I'm not advocating you have to write music out on staff paper, but even just know what chords you're using. I think a lot of people do it by feel and by their ear. And I think it's really good to know some of the theory behind what you're doing, at least, frankly, all of it, just so you know, oh, why does that sound that way? And if I want a different sound, how do I get that? And the
Yeah.
more tools you use, the more you learn, the better you'll be, right? And you should every day push yourself to do something new. um it's hard, right? Because we're none of us, it's hard not to be lazy. It's easy to be lazy. But
And I mean, and there's so much stuff out there that you can just
right,
discover. So it's like, which do you choose and all? But
exactly,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. So I'm always trying to my one of my favorite pastimes is I'll hear a composer or even a pop person or whatever, doesn't even matter. I'll say, okay, I like that person. Well, who are they related to, or who do they know, or who they work with? Or if it's a composer, who they study with, or who's in their country or in their town or something. And I love going down these rabbit holes where I'm discovering new musicians that way. And so I'll keep I use Evernote. So I'll keep listening to Evernote. Oh, I heard this composer. And then that composer was studied with this teacher. And then their friend is this person. And I'll start listening to all this weird music that I've never heard before. Right. Because there's just so many musicians, right? It's crazy what's out there. It's almost too much. It's overwhelming, right? Um, so I think that's a lot of fun. It'll keep you fresh, but not listening to the same thing that everybody else listens to, because you'll discover people you've never heard before, right? Um, if I hear one more composer, like seriously, quote Bartok and their string quartet, it's like, dude, I know you listen to Bartok. I can hear that a mile away. Or if you listen to Steve Reich or Philip Glass or some of the other people that are out there now, Nico Muley or something. I don't know. I always know. I'm like, oh, you heard so and so. I can pick it out like a divining rod. I hear it. I'm like, I hear you, man. I heard what you hear. They're going, how did you know? Or if they use cut and paste, I'm like, I know you're using cut and paste in Sibelius. How did you know? I can tell. I've been doing this for a long time.
yeah.
Right. So to try doing finding things off the beaten path, I guess is what I'm trying to say. that keeps you more interesting, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see. To start wrapping up here,
Yeah.
uh, just real quick, maybe you can, because you mentioned influences. So for
Hmm.
like, I hear some Segovia and I mean Segovia,
Really?
Stravinsky. No,
Wow, Andre Segovia. That's interesting. No,
Stravinsky. I meant to say
Stravinsky.
Stravinsky.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
and
Thank you. I mean, that's a compliment. I think Stravinsky's great.
yeah, like some of the rhythmic sections, and I think also to mention just I went to a classical concert recently, and I just love going in person because yeah, I mean they don't even mic their or instruments up. It's crazy how loud they are without
Ha!
mics.
Well, that's sorry, I'm laughing. That's funny though, because part of the joy of classical music is that the world of it, it's not, as we all know, it's not, anybody that knows classical music now, especially contemporary music, knows that some of it's amplified now, so it's not all acoustic. But the tradition is that musicians learn to produce a lot of sound acoustically, because look, back hundreds of years ago, there was no amplification, so you had to produce sound that way. Now that we can artificially amplify sound, that way, then we don't need to do it acoustically, which is why pop singers oftentimes use microphones most of the time, because, well, their voices aren't operatic. They can't fill a giant hall without a mic. That's okay. It's just a different way of doing it. But I think it is wonderful to be in a hall and feel the air moving around a classical concert, and that's all usually all acoustic, and it's like, it's amazing, right? um Nothing like being slammed with like a big voice by like an opera singer. Like, it's incredible that they can do that. Or like an orchestra, like the sound, a mass sound like that is really cool. But it's very different than like a bunch of amplifiers facing you and a few musicians on stage, and they're also hitting you with a lot of sound, but it's done differently.
Yeah,
I find all that fascinating. I think it's really cool. So
yeah.
um
Bring it. I'll bring it back to the guy who commented, "Nice beat, bro." Like what? Like wait a second. Okay,
okay.
wait. No, no, no.
Well,
Like
do you know how many people, I mean, I know we have a couple minutes left. Do you know how many people have said to me on SoundCloud, like, they're like, so uh you know where did you they'll say something like they don't realize it's acoustic. And I'll say, that's really cool, like, what software did you use, or what sound is that? They'll say
it's
like that, what sound is that? I'm like, that's the sound. The sound you hear is the trumpet, not a
oh
trumpet
man.
sound.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
they don't even realize those are real musicians, and I'm like, oh, that's nuts. But they don't know. It's okay, they're so just pulling it out of like whatever
yeah.
software they're using.
And I mean, even in the that community, it's known that live instruments sound better.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, and of course I'm being silly. Like, not everybody's like that,
yeah.
but there are a
Well,
few people will comment like that, and I'm
yeah,
always very nice to them, because I'm always like, they don't know. Like, it's not their, they just do their thing. They maybe don't have experience with stuff like that. That's okay. So I'm always like, oh, those are real instruments. And I'll kind of point them to something to show them, like a video. Well, hey, so I guess, wow, we're almost out of time, right? So
yeah,
this has been great. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks for thanks for coming on and
Yeah,
doing the interview, and hopefully people will enjoy it. So I will
absolutely.
post this on Reddit and YouTube,
Okay,
and
great.
we'll go from there.
I
And
hope everybody, yeah, check
yeah,
out my music and check out your music and what you're up to, and let's build a community, right?
yeah. I'll put the links in the description. And thanks for coming, y'all.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.